Alien girl confesses a strange fear to human, but human sees the fear taking his shape. Hello everyone. Before we begin today's story, I have a small favor to ask. Please hit subscribe and turn on the notification bell so you never miss our channel's new videos. It's quick, free, and the best way to support us in bringing you more dramatic stories. Your support means the world to us. Where are you watching from? Drop your city or country in the comments below. Thank you very much. Now, let's return to our main character. The storm arrived without warning, a low static hum rolling through the abandoned outpost like a held breath. Ethan Cole stepped into the main corridor, helmet lamp cutting a thin white line through drifting dust. The place felt frozen in time, panels half-lit, floor grates cold under his boots, each footstep ringing against metal that hadn't felt life in years. He rubbed his gloved hands together, breath fogging inside his visor. Just a quick systems check, he muttered, though the wind outside rattled the hull as if trying to correct him. The air carried a faint charge, a smell like heated copper and old circuitry, clinging to the back of his throat. He adjusted the wrist display on his suit. Temperature readouts flickered around 20 degrees Fahrenheit, dropping fast. He stepped deeper into the central chamber, drawn by a soft tone. Almost a voice, almost a memory of one. When his lamp swept across the observation window, something moved behind it. Not a shadow, not a trick of failing lights. A figure. She stood with her back to him at first, her silhouette caught in the dim blue glow of emergency power cells. Her skin reflected the light like liquid silver blue, hair shifting as if alive with static. Ethan froze, instinct kicking in, but not fear, more like the shock of stepping into a dream he wasn't prepared to have. "Hey," he said gently, lowering his voice. "Are you hurt?" The figure tensed. Her shoulders rose, breath sharp and soft at the same time. She turned only halfway, just enough for him to catch the glimmer of her eyes. Pale, almost crystal-like, filled with something he didn't yet understand. He lifted both hands slowly, palms out. "It's okay. I'm not here to bother you. I just need to make sure you're safe in this cold." The hum of failing heaters trembled through the floor. She flinched at the sound, stepping backward until her hand touched the cracked glass panel behind her. "Don't look at me," she whispered, voice thin, like it had been scraped by fear. Ethan took a small step forward, careful, steady. "I'm not here to judge you. What's your name?" Her eyes lifted toward him, uncertain, shimmering in the dim light. For a breath, the room seemed to hold still. The storm outside quieted. Even the trembling panel lights steadied as if waiting. And in that delicate silence, Ethan realized the truth. Whatever she feared wasn't the storm, the cold, or the dark. It was something she believed she couldn't face alone. For a moment Ethan thought the sound was the storm settling again, a low vibration running beneath his boots, but it was her breathing shifting, uneven, almost like she was trying to hide it. He dimmed his helmet lamp a little, letting the glow soften. Harsh light felt wrong around someone already folding in on herself. "I promise I am not here to hurt you," he said, voice steady, careful. She pressed her hand tighter against the cracked glass behind her, fingers trembling. The faint traces of bioluminescence in her skin pulsed like ripples under moonlight, each flicker revealing how cold she was. "You should not come closer," she whispered. "It reacts when someone gets near. I do not want it happening again." The way she said it made Ethan pause. Not confusion, not superstition. Something lived in that sentence, something she was trying to protect him from. He shifted his weight slowly, lowering himself into a half-crouch so he did not tower over her. "All right," he said. "I will stay right here. Just talk to me. Tell me what is going on." The emergency lights flickered again, bathing them both in shifting shades of blue. She swallowed, eyes darting to the floor, then to his face, then away again as if looking at him too long hurt. "My name is Silari," she finally said, voice brushing the air like a thin thread. "I came to this outpost months ago because it was quiet. I thought the stillness would help me control it." Ethan waited. Nothing in her tone sounded dangerous. Only exhausted. Control what? She hesitated, and the silence stretched long enough for the wind outside to scrape against the hull again. "Fear," she whispered. "My kind sees it differently. When fear grows, it shapes itself. It becomes something you can almost touch." He felt a small cold knot form at the base of his spine, not from her words, but from the way she tried to shrink from them. Her hands twisted together. It is why I live alone. Why I avoid contact. When I fear a person, the fear takes their shape. It becomes a reflection of them, wrong and distorted. And they see it. Everyone sees it. She looked up at him then, eyes glossy, uncertain. Please do not ask me what form it took this time. Ethan exhaled slowly, letting the tension slip from his shoulders. Silari, he said softly, I am not here to run from you. I am not here to judge you. You are freezing. You need heat more than anything right now. Will you let me help with that first? She did not answer, but she did not back away as he reached into his pack and pulled out a thermal blanket. He unfolded it slowly so the motion would not startle her. The soft fibers began to warm as they reacted to the air. You can take it, he said. I will just set it here on the console. He placed it down gently and stepped back. She watched his hand, his posture, his distance. Her breath steadied by a fraction. After a few seconds, she reached for the blanket, movements small and uncertain but real. Thank you, she murmured. Ethan nodded. You are welcome. The storm rattled the far shutters again, but inside the room the air felt different, warmer somehow in the quiet way trust begins. Silari pulled the blanket around her shoulders, and the faint glow in her skin softened. You do not understand, she said quietly. When my fear takes shape, it does not lie. Ethan held her gaze, his voice low. Then let us face whatever it is together. Her eyes widened like she was not prepared for that answer, like no one had ever offered to stay long enough to try. Silari held the blanket tighter, as if anchoring herself to something steadier than the shaking metal around them. Her breath formed a small fog in the cold air, softening each word before it reached Ethan. The emergency lights pulsed again, lighting her features in slow waves. Like the room was breathing with her. Ethan stayed still, letting the quiet shape itself. The storm outside drummed faintly against the outpost shell, but inside everything felt hushed, waiting. You really want to see it? She asked at last, voice barely more than a threat. Most people do not. They turn away before it fully forms. Ethan did not move closer, did not break her fragile space. I want to understand, he said. Not run from something that hurts you. She looked down at her hands, fingers brushing the blanket's fabric like she was memorizing the warmth. Understanding is not easy, she whispered. Fear does not ask permission. It simply becomes. For a moment, only the soft hum of dying generators filled the air. Then she lifted her gaze toward the observation window beside them. The panel's surface, dark and reflective, caught the glow of her skin and Ethan's helmet lamp. It began here, she said, nodding toward the glass. When the storm hit last night, I felt something shift inside me, something old and familiar. Fear always arrives quietly at first, like a guest who does not wish to wake the house. Ethan studied the glass, but saw only their reflections swimming in the dim light. What did it show you? He asked. Silari hesitated, drawing in a long, uneven breath. A figure, she said softly. Tall. Familiar. Someone I had met only once before. She glanced at him, then looked away quickly. You. Ethan felt the moment pause, as if the air itself did not know what to do with her confession. He did not speak, giving her space to continue. It took your outline, she said. Your shape, your way of standing, even your expression. But it was wrong. Fear always distorts. It makes sharp edges where none should be. For a second, she pressed her lips together, steadying her voice. I thought if I kept you away, it would disappear. Fear usually fades when distance grows. But it did not. Ethan adjusted his stance, grounding himself. Silari, he said gently, I need you to tell me something. When you saw that shape in the glass, were you afraid of me? Or of losing control of whatever it is inside you? Her eyes flickered toward him, luminous and full of something he could not yet name. I do not fear you, she whispered. I fear what my mind does with someone I trust too quickly. Ethan absorbed that in silence, feeling the truth of it settle like dust. Trust. She had barely spoken to him before today, yet her fear had chosen his shape. That meant something. Something delicate. Something she did not know how to voice. He stepped slightly closer, not enough to crowd her, just enough that she knew he was not retreating. Then let us test something, he said quietly. Look at the glass now. Tell me what you see. She turned, slowly, reluctantly. The surface caught her reflection first, soft and silver blue. Then Ethan's reflection beside hers, steady, still, warm despite the cold air. No distortion. No twisted outline. Just two figures standing close enough to share the same trembling light. Silari released a small breath, like the air had been locked inside her chest for hours. "It is gone," she said. "The shape is gone." Ethan nodded, voice low. Maybe it came from loneliness, not fear. Something in her expression softened, the kind of softness that happens only when a person realizes they are no longer facing something alone. "Perhaps," she whispered. But her eyes lingered on the reflection a moment longer, as if she was learning to believe it. The quiet after her confession felt almost warmer than the blanket around her shoulders. Ethan let the moment settle, aware of the soft hums beneath the floor and the distant scrape of wind against the outer panels. The outpost felt less like an empty shell now and more like a place holding its breath with them. Silari watched the window a little longer, as if expecting the distorted shape to return, but it stayed clear. Only their reflections remained, steady and calm. Finally she lowered her gaze. "Fear should not vanish this easily," she murmured. "Not after holding on to me for so long." Ethan adjusted the settings on his wrist display, checking the power grid. A few red indicators pulsed, showing that several modules had dropped offline. "It may not be gone," he said, "but you are not facing it alone anymore. That changes things." She blinked slowly, the gentle glow in her skin softening each movement. "I do not understand why you want to help me," she said. "Most would leave before asking a single question." Ethan shrugged lightly, his breath clouding inside his visor. "I fix things. Outposts, generators, broken heating systems, and sometimes people, if they let me." Silari absorbed that, her shoulders easing a little beneath the blanket. He saw the subtle shift, the way trust settled into her posture like a fragile light. The floor vibrated lightly as the storm intensified outside. The lights flickered, then steadied. Ethan checked the meter again. "Power will need stabilizing," he said. "If the storm keeps up, we may lose heat entirely." Silari nodded. "The regulator is in the sub-deck," she said quietly. "But I have not gone down there since," she trailed off. She did not need to finish. Ethan could guess why. "We can handle it together," he said. Her eyes lifted toward him, uncertain. "It is dark down there," she whispered. "And the shapes show themselves in places where the light is weak." "Good," Ethan said gently. "Then we will bring our own light." Her expression flickered with something almost like surprise. She held the blanket tighter for warmth and courage. "You truly think it will not appear again?" Ethan adjusted the lamp output on his helmet, casting a soft glow over the narrow corridor ahead. "I cannot promise that. But I can promise I will still be here if it does." Silari drew a slow breath, steadying herself. "Very well," she whispered. "I will show you the way." They moved through the corridor, Ethan leading by half a step, Silari walking close enough that her shoulder brushed the drifting dust his lamp disturbed. The walls around them carried old scuffs from equipment and faint marks of previous storms. A low alarm pinged once, then fell silent as the system corrected itself. At the end of the hall, the access hatch waited, metal edges cold and unwelcoming. Silari paused before touching it. "The last time I opened this," she said softly. The shape appeared in the reflection of the hatch. Ethan lowered his lamp, letting the light warm the metal surface. "Look now," he said. She looked. Only her reflection. Only his beside hers. No distortion. No shadow other than the one their bodies cast. Her breath left her in a shaky sigh. "It is strange," she whispered. "To see the world stay still when I expect it to twist." Ethan pressed the release and the hatch slid open with a soft hiss. Warm air drifting up from below. He turned to her, meeting her eyes. "Stay?" "Close," he said. "You lead the way." She nodded once, gathering the blanket around her like armor, and stepped down into the dim sub-deck with him following right behind, their lights cutting through the dark together. The air in the sub-deck carried a different kind of cold, not sharp like the storm above, but old and still, the kind that settled into corners where light rarely reached. Ethan descended the ladder one rung at a time, letting his lamp sweep across the space before stepping off. Silari followed close behind, the blanket brushing softly against the metal as she moved. The subdeck was narrow, lined with storage crates and dormant machinery. A low hum came from the central regulator core, steady but uneven, like a heartbeat trying to remember its rhythm. Silari paused at the bottom of the ladder, her fingers gripping the blanket tighter. "It was near the regulator," she whispered. That is where I saw the shape clearest. Ethan nodded and kept his lamp aimed at the floor first, then up toward the rows of panels. We will work through it, he said, step by step. She took a slow breath and began walking, her light footsteps almost lost beneath the hum of the failing equipment. The closer they moved toward the regulator core, the more the air felt charged, carrying a faint static that prickled at the edges of Ethan's visor. Silari stopped again, eyes fixed on a brushed steel panel on the wall. The surface reflected their lights, rippling slightly as the power flickered. Ethan followed her gaze. The reflections in the panel were clear at first, just stretched slightly by the curvature of the metal. His own outline, hers beside it, nothing else. Silari's voice wavered. Before, it stood where you were standing now, but taller, sharper, like the fear had carved pieces out of you and left only edges. Ethan shifted slightly to the side so she could see the reflection change with his movement. What do you see now? She stared for a long moment, chest rising and falling beneath the blanket. Only you, she whispered. Only you as you are. Ethan allowed a small breath to leave him. Good, he said. That means we are moving in the right direction. The regulator core pulsed again with a soft thump, and Silari flinched instinctively. Ethan stepped in front of her, not blocking her, but giving her something steady to focus on. It is just pressure change, he explained. The storm topside is messing with the intake lines. She nodded, but he could see the memory still pulling at her expression. He knelt beside the regulator and began pulling up diagnostic data on his wrist display. The readings flickered, showing fluctuating coolant flow and a failing heat loop. I can fix this, he said, but I will need to open the access panel. The lights may dim for a few seconds. Silari's breath caught. Dim light is where it appears most easily. Ethan met her eyes, letting the glow of his helmet lamp rest on her face so she could see the steadiness in his expression. Then stay close. If the lights flicker, focus on my voice. She hesitated, then murmured, I can do that. Ethan opened the panel. The lights overhead lowered, dipping just slightly as the system rerouted power. Silari stiffened but kept her gaze locked on him. You are all right, Ethan said softly, working through the tangle of cables. You are safe. The lights dimmed a little more. Silari inhaled sharply. Ethan, I feel it changing inside me again. Keep your eyes on me, he said, tightening a loose regulator joint. Tell me what you see. She looked at him, her voice barely holding steady. The reflection behind you. It is trying to form, but it cannot. It keeps fading. Ethan kept his hand steady. Why is it fading? Silari swallowed. Because you are here. The real you is stronger than the shape. The regulator gave a soft click, the circuitry realigned, and the lights brightened to their normal glow once more. The forming shape in the reflection dissolved instantly, leaving only their outlines again, quiet and calm. Silari exhaled in relief, a small sound she had been holding for far too long. Ethan closed the panel and stood. There, he said gently. We made it through. She looked at him with something soft and new in her expression, something steady. Perhaps my fear does not decide everything, she whispered. Not when someone refuses to leave. The regulator settled into a calmer rhythm, its soft pulses evening out until the hum felt almost gentle under their feet. Ethan double-checked the readings on his wrist display, watching the temperature stabilize 1 degree at a time. The air in the subdeck warmed by a fraction, enough to ease the sting of the cold against their skin. Silari stood beside him, the blanket wrapped tight around her shoulders, but her breathing had smoothed, no longer sharp with fear. She watched him in the dim light, uncertain but grounded in a way she had not been earlier. It responds to confidence, she whispered, almost to herself. The fear. It weakens when the person it imitates shows certainty. Ethan glanced at her. Then it picked the wrong person to copy, he said lightly. I am not going anywhere. Her lips parted in something like a quiet laugh, small but real, a sound the room seemed to welcome. The lights above them flickered again, but this time only for a heartbeat before returning to steady brightness. Silari's eyes tracked the movement, then eased when the shadows remained unchanged. It did not come back, she said, even when the lights shifted. That is because your mind is adjusting, Ethan replied. Fear hates being seen for what it is. She looked at the panel one more time, then drew a slow breath. I always believed my fear controlled me, that it shaped everything around me. I did not realize how much of it came from being alone. Ethan secured his toolkit and nodded toward the ladder. Then let us get out of the cold. The outpost should hold steady for the night. She hesitated before moving. Ethan, she said quietly. When the shape formed earlier, it was not just fear. It was memory too. My kind remembers emotions differently. He lifted his helmet lamp slightly to soften the shadows across her face. What do you mean? She looked down, her fingers brushing the fabric of the blanket. When I saw the distorted version of you, it was not because you frightened me. It was because something in your presence echoed an old memory. A person I trusted once. Someone who tried to help me understand this ability before it grew out of control. Ethan stood still, letting her decide how far she wanted to go. Silari's voice thinned, not fragile but honest. When that person left, the fear began shaping itself into him. Every distorted outline I saw afterward carried his shadow. When the shape took your form last night, I thought I was losing control again, confusing one memory with another. But now? Ethan asked gently. She lifted her gaze to him, the faint glow in her eyes steadier than before. Now I understand it was not confusion. My fear shifted because it felt something familiar in you. The possibility of trust. Ethan's breath quieted inside his visor. He had met broken circuits, burned-out engines, and fractured systems, but this felt different. This was a fracture shaped like a memory. I am not him, Ethan said softly. But I am here. Silari nodded, a small motion wrapped in careful acceptance. Yes, you are here. They climbed the ladder together, Ethan keeping his light angled so she never had to face the dark alone. When they reached the upper corridor, the air felt warmer, less hollow. The storm outside pressed against the walls in slow waves, but the outpost no longer felt like a place filled with ghosts. Silari paused at the top, looking back toward the dim subdeck. For the first time, she whispered, I am not afraid to leave the dark behind. Ethan watched her step into the corridor's glow, the blanket shifting like a soft blue wave around her shoulders, and he followed, aware that something between them had quietly changed shape too. The storm had softened to a low rumble by the time Ethan and Silari reached the central chamber again, its glow filtering through the reinforced windows like distant lightning behind frosted glass. The air felt warmer now, steadier, almost as if the outpost itself had relaxed with them. Ethan powered down his wrist display and set his toolkit aside. Silari stood a few steps away, letting her fingers brush the console surface as if testing whether the quiet was real. The blanket wrapped around her shoulders glowed faintly under the emergency lights, reflecting soft shades of blue along the metal floor. It feels different, she whispered. Like the storm outside is finally losing interest. Ethan smiled behind his visor. Storms do that. They make a lot of noise before they give up. Silari tilted her head, a small expression of curiosity warming her features. Do humans always talk about weather as if it has feelings? Only when we are trying to make each other feel better, Ethan replied, lifting his helmet off at last. The air was cold, but breathable now. Silari watched him, her eyes widening slightly at seeing his face without the barrier of glass. You look different without the helmet, she murmured. Less distant. Good, Ethan said quietly. I would rather not be distant. Her gaze held his for a moment, gentle but searching. The lights above them pulsed once, then brightened, fully charged now that the regulator had stabilized. The quiet that followed felt earned. Silari stepped closer, her bare feet nearly silent on the metal floor. Ethan, she began, what you said earlier, about fear hating being seen, she hesitated, looking down at her hands. I have spent so long trying to hide from my own reflections. When the shape appeared as you, I thought it meant my fear was consuming everything again. But seeing it weaken, seeing it fade, she drew a breath. I did not expect that to feel like hope. Ethan leaned against the console, giving her space while staying close enough that she did not feel alone. Maybe it means that you are stronger than you think, he said. And maybe it means you are not meant to face this by yourself. Her expression softened, touched by something deeper than relief. When I saw your reflection beside mine earlier, unchanged, it was the first time in years I felt safe looking at my own fear. Ethan nodded slowly. Then we keep pushing it back. Together. Silari lifted her eyes to him again, her voice low. Ethan, I need to tell you something else. Something I have been afraid to admit. His posture steadied, sensing the weight behind her words. I am listening. She stepped closer, the glow from her skin reflecting faintly across his face. When the shape took your form, it was not only fear. It was attachment trying to form too quickly. My kind connects through emotion, and sometimes that emotion becomes too sharp, too fast. It overwhelms. Ethan absorbed this, letting the quiet expand just enough to hold her words without judgment. You are saying the fear did not come from me, he said gently, but from what you felt toward me. Silari nodded, her gaze steady but vulnerable. I felt trust forming too suddenly. My mind panicked. It tried to twist it into something familiar, something it could control. Ethan exhaled slowly, not with discomfort, but with understanding. Silari, he said softly, I am not asking you to rush anything. Trust takes time. I am willing to give it all the time it needs. Her shoulders eased at that, a visible release of tension she had been carrying for far too long. Thank you, she whispered. I do not know how to explain it, but talking to you, it quiets the storm inside me more than any solitude ever has. Ethan reached out, not touching her, just letting his hand rest in the space between them where she could choose to meet it or not. Her gaze followed the gesture, and after a long breath, she placed her hand over his, light as a whisper. There was no distortion in the windows, no reflection shifting into fear, just her hand and his, steady in the soft blue light. For the first time, Silari said, her voice barely above a breath, my fear is not shaping you. My trust is. The outpost lights continued their slow return to full strength, each panel brightening one after another until the central chamber no longer felt like a forgotten place hiding in the dark. Silari stood in the center of the room, her hand still resting lightly over Ethan's, the soft glow of her skin reflecting across the polished floor. The storm outside had softened to a distant whisper, its fading rumble blending into the natural hum of the generators. For the first time since Ethan had arrived, the outpost felt alive. Silari glanced at the windows, almost expecting the distorted shape to appear again, but the glass held only their reflections. It is strange, she said quietly, to see something normal in a place that has held so many shadows. Normal is good, Ethan replied. Normal means you are in control again. She hesitated at those words, a small crease forming between her brows. I do not know if I am in control, she admitted. Perhaps I am simply borrowing your steadiness. Ethan gave a soft smile. I think steadiness works best when shared. She looked at him with an expression that held a quiet gratitude, one that did not need to be spoken to be understood. Her breathing had steadied, the tension in her posture nearly gone. She released his hand gently, though her fingers lingered for a moment before falling back to her side. There is something I did not tell you, she said, voice softer now, almost cautious. Ethan nodded for her to continue. Silari paced slowly, the blanket trailing behind her like a soft wave. My ability to manifest. Fear is only one side of it, she said. There is another, one that is much rarer among my kind. Ethan listened, aware that whatever she was revealing now was something deeply personal. When we connect to someone emotionally, she continued, we sometimes see echoes of what they fear too. Ethan's breathing stilled, not from fear but from the weight of the confession. You can see my fear. She nodded once, her eyes gentle, not probing. Not clearly. Not unless the emotion is strong. But earlier, when we were in the subdeck, when the reflection struggled to form, she inhaled slowly. It was not only my fear weakening. Yours stood in its place for a moment. Ethan's brow furrowed. What did you see? Silari shook her head softly. Only a faint outline. Not a shape. More like a feeling. You are afraid of something too, Ethan. Something you keep quiet. Ethan let the silence breathe between them. He looked down at his hands, then back at her. Everyone has something, he said. Even people who look steady on the outside. Silari stepped closer, her voice gentle. You do not have to tell me. I only want you to know that I sensed it. And that the fear I saw, it did not feel like danger. It felt like loss. Ethan's eyes softened, surprise mixing with understanding. You are unusual, he said quietly. Most people do not notice things like that. She gave a faint smile. Most people do not listen to feelings as loudly as we do. The room felt warmer now, not because of the repaired regulator, but because of the unfolding truth between them. Ethan exhaled, steady and grounded. You are right, he said. I do carry something like that. But it is not something I need to hide from you. Her expression brightened, touched by trust. The lights above them flickered once more, this time not from instability, but as the system fully reset, casting a soft wash of warm white across the room. Silari turned toward the window again. Their reflections stood side by side, clear and undistorted. Earlier, she whispered, my fear shaped you. But now, it reflects you as you truly are. Ethan stepped beside her, their reflections aligning in the glass. And what do you see now? He asked. Silari's eyes softened as she answered. Not fear, not distortion. She touched the window, lightly, her fingertips glowing faintly against the glass. I see someone my fear can no longer reshape. Someone my trust chooses instead. Ethan did not speak, but the quiet between them held the truth she had finally uncovered. The storm had passed, both outside the outpost and within her. The outpost rested in a rare quiet, the kind that felt earned after a long struggle, the kind that gently settled over metal floors and dim panels like a blanket. Ethan and Silari stood side by side before the large observation window, their reflections steady in the softened glow. The storm clouds outside drifted away, trails of pale blue ion dust scattering against the upper atmosphere like fading lanterns. The silence between them was not empty. It carried every moment they had survived together, every confession, every step out of the dark. Silari lifted her hand, fingertips brushing the clear surface of the window. The faint glow beneath her skin reflected like a soft constellation. When the storm began last night, she whispered, I believed I would face it the same way I face everything else. Alone. Ethan leaned slightly forward, his voice low but warm. You are not alone anymore. She turned her head toward him, eyes luminous. I know that now. Her voice carried a fragile relief, as if the words were something she had waited years to admit. The outpost lights brightened one final time, signaling complete system recovery. A soft chime rolled through the chamber, gentle and unobtrusive. Silari's gaze followed the lights overhead. The outpost survived because you came, she said. If you had not repaired the regulator, the cold would have consumed this place. Ethan shook his head lightly. It survived because you stayed strong enough to face your fear. She considered that, her expression softening with understanding rather than doubt. Strength is strange, she murmured. Sometimes it hides in the quietest places. Ethan stepped closer, not touching her, simply sharing the same space, the same warm glow from the restored lights. What happens now? He asked gently. She looked back toward the window, where the last glimmers of the storm dissolved into open sky. Now I choose, she said. For the first time, I choose without fear shaping the decision. Her fingers slipped from the glass. I do not want to stay in this outpost anymore. Not in the silence that fed the shadows. Ethan nodded. You can come with me. My transport is small, but it is warm, reliable, and very boring. Silari smiled at that, a quiet curve of her lips that brightened more than the lights above them. Boring sounds safe, she said. Safe sounds peaceful. Ethan watched her, letting her decide in her own time. Silari inhaled deeply, the faint glow across her skin rising and falling like breath made visible. I would like to see the world beyond this place, she said. I would like to learn what my fear kept hidden from me. And I would like, her voice softened, hesitant but sincere. I would like to continue learning what trust feels like. If you will allow that. Ethan's answer came without hesitation. I would like that too. Silari's eyes shone at the simplicity of his words, as if the plain truth meant more than elaborate promises ever could. A soft pulse of warm light rippled through the window as the first rays of dawn touched the upper clouds. Silari stepped slightly closer, her presence calm, her breathing steady. The fear no longer shapes your reflection, she said quietly. It no longer needs to. Ethan looked at their reflections together, clear and unbroken in the morning glow. What does it show now? He asked. Silari studied the image in the glass for a long moment, and when she finally spoke, her voice carried the stillness of a truth she had waited a lifetime to find. It shows who I am when I am not afraid, she said. And it shows you standing beside me, exactly as you are. The storm was gone. The outpost had quieted. And for the first time, Silari stepped away from the window not to escape a reflection, but to walk toward the future it revealed.